But you know, part of the problem is, does somebody really even know what a drink is? You know, 1.5 ounces of shot, hard liquor, 5 ounces of wine, or 12 ounces of beer. Do people even know that? So what we did here at NTU, I had a student fascinating. In fact, I'll tell you, at NTU, one of the things that psychology students do in the 4th year is a final year project. And if you're a really good student, you can actually do a research project. And this started as an FYP, final year project of a student. We showed the research at an international conference. Okay, guy did a great job. He was interested, do undergraduates even know what a drink is? So they'd come into the laboratory and he'd give them a pitcher of water and a glass and he'd say, pour, drink. Okay? And the glass size was either 16 ounces, 22 ounces, or 32 ounces. And they just pour how much they think a drink is. Because, you know, it's not like a 16-year-old's going down to Clark Key, hopefully, and going into a pub and having a bartender. Right? They're pouring their own stuff. So if you average everything together, here's the data. This is what the Health Promotion Board in Singapore says is a standard drink. Undergraduates are pouring twice that. So when an undergraduate says to me, in the last 2 weeks I had 10 drinks, no, you had 20. So quite a bit more. That's important because that highlights maybe all of the data we've got on human alcohol consumption isn't right. Maybe it's all underreporting what a standard drink actually is. Okay, that's all data collection. So psychology also works with helping people. If you're fighting an addiction, if somebody's fighting an addiction, it's brutal. I mean, it's absolutely brutal. And pharmacotherapies can help. But pharmacotherapies are not the only answer. In fact, they're not the answer. Pharmacotherapy coupled with therapy with groups or individual therapy is what people need if they're ever going to get off of an addiction. An addiction takes over your life. You've got to walk out of that mess and, frankly, create a new life. And it just isn't easy to do. So some of what psychologists do is they help people. They help them identify that, yeah, you've messed up. But you don't have to be defined by your mistakes. And we can help you get better. Psychologists do a lot of that kind of stuff. Okay, I can compare NUS to NTU. I usually get that question. And what jobs can I get? But I'll wait for those. We've got a few minutes left, and I want to save time for you to ask questions. Is this what a psych lecture looks like, or am I lying to you? This is what my lectures look like. There's times I will confess I apologize to my classes, because at some level I feel like they deserve a more professional teacher. But, you know, I love what I do. I just love teaching. I get paid to talk about stuff that I am just fascinated by. And it's hard not to get excited about it. I leave my lecture hall, I go back to my office, and I cry tears of academic joy. I mean, I'll do it today. I'll go back and just sob. You got a tissue? Other faculty teach in different ways, but they are all good. All of the faculty at NTU are great. All right, what questions do you have? It can be about psychology in general. It can be about psychology at NTU. It can be about the future. I'll try and give you the best information that I can. Anybody got a question? All right, let me tell you a rule I started in my class last year. I've lived in Singapore. I first came to Singapore in 2007. I first came to Singapore in 2007 on a sabbatical. I taught at the community college over on Kent Ridge for 6 months. That joke just fell flat. Forget it. My family and I came back in 2009 because we really liked Singapore. And we had an opportunity to go to NUS and NTU, and we chose to come to NTU. And we've been here for 5 years. We live on campus. Where was I going with this? I don't remember at all where I was going with this. We've been on NTU's campus for 5 years. So I've been in the Psychology Division here for 5 years. Oh yeah, the rule. So I've been teaching in Singapore for about 6 years. And I noticed this fascinating trend. And it's going to happen today. Okay? And the trend is, I give a lecture, I ask for questions, everybody sits there. And I think, everybody understood perfectly. I am such a good teacher. And then I say class over, and there is 58 people lined up to ask me a question. So here's a rule that I have in my modules now. I don't take questions in class. I don't take questions after class. You've got to ask the question in class. Why is that? Because the question you have is a great question. And everybody else wants that answer too. They're thinking it. So I have students, they come down and they're like, okay, well you said this, and I'm like, hey, you got to wait and ask that question at the next lecture. Because it's a great question. And so what I want you to do now, I'll talk to you afterwards, okay? But I really want you to ask the question now. Because there's other people in the room that are thinking the same thing and would like the information. Okay? So, do you have anything? Ask it now instead of waiting at the end. Particularly since I've saved 14 minutes for this. I mean, otherwise what I'm going to end up doing is I got to kill 14 minutes of time, and that's just going to be painful. Yes, thank you. Let's give her a hand. That's outstanding.
I want to know whether addiction is really a state of mind.
Is addiction really a state of mind? Okay, so a lot of it... You mean you're actually going to hold me responsible for what's on my slide? Okay, I'm looking around the room here real quick about how okay, I got a question. I got a confession. Can I confess something? Okay, they say confession's good for the soul. The title of my talk was How Psychology Can Understand Addictions. And I submitted that. And the people who run this, they came back to me and they said, that's not edgy enough. You got to make it, is addiction really a state of mind? So I was like, okay. So I don't really know what it means. They made it up. Okay? But it does raise an interesting question. Okay? It does raise an interesting question. Let's think about addictions for a minute. And we can separate addictions really into, let's separate them into two classes if you can, okay? You can have pharmacological addictions. Coke, crack, heroin, morphine, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, that kind of stuff, okay? Those addictions, the research is pretty clear, produces profound biological changes, okay? You can have behavioral addictions. Gambling, online gaming, sex, eating, which is a bit of a mix, shopping addiction. Those behavioral addictions, here's the thing I find fascinating. They work through exactly the same brain mechanism that cocaine does. If somebody takes a shot of cocaine and you're doing a brain scan on them, you'll see one pathway become activated. If you take a gambler, an addicted gambler, and you take a brain scan on him and you say, I want you to think about the last time you won big, the very same brain system's acting. Okay? Addiction is addiction at some level in the brain. Where it gets to be a state of mind, and this is what I think makes addiction so fascinating and so hard. Addicts struggle. I mean, you can get clean. An addict can get clean, okay, where they're not engaging in the behavior anymore. But an addict will spend the rest of their life fighting a psychological craving. An alcoholic can taste the alcohol. I mean, it's a need. They can want it. It's hard to quantify craving. A gambler can remember that excitement sitting at the table. Someone who was strung out on drugs for a while can remember that feeling. And in that sense, they are constantly fighting that demon, if you will, in their life. And that is a state of mind. Addiction is one of those things, it's not like the flu, where you get the flu, you take your meds, and, it's gone. Addiction is one of those things that you become an addict, you get yourself clean, and you fight against it the rest of your life. It never leaves you. It doesn't define you, but it doesn't leave you. And in that sense, yes, it is a state of mind. Where it's really interesting is marijuana abuse. In my home country, marijuana use in a couple of our states just became legal. And part of the issue is, does marijuana produce a biological addiction? Does it produce changes in brain state? The data are not clear-cut on that, I'll be honest with you. But does it produce a psychological addiction? Yeah, it does. So what's the difference between a psychological addiction and a biological addiction? The field, I'll be honest with you, is just now beginning to explore that question. So we really don't have a great answer on that. Which I'm excited about, because hey, I'm only 45 years old, I got to work for another 20 years. So I like the fact that there's questions that we don't know the answer to, because that's what I'll end up spending my life studying. Did that give you any kind of an answer? Good. That's a good question. To see, and that wasn't painful. All right, was it painful? No, it says no. All right, anybody else got a question? Yes?
If I don't have any science background, can I still study philosophy?
If you don't have any psychology background, can you study philosophy? I don't know. But can you study psychology? Yeah, you can. You do not have to study biological psychology. At NTU, your major is organized in such a way that there are a few classes you have to take. Okay? Intro, stats, design, and then it opens up so that you can pick classes that you do want to take or you don't want to take. Okay? And no, you don't have to have a really strong biological background to be able to study psychology. People that are more interested in clinical or more interested in developmental or more interested in cognitive or personality, they can avoid, to be honest with you, the vast majority of the biological classes. If biology is what you groove on, NTU Psychology, to the best of my knowledge, is the only university in Singapore that has a second major program with the School of Biological Sciences. It's tiny. We only take in about 20 students a year. They are all outstanding students. Okay? They're all great students. And you get a major in psychology and a second major in biology. And you can do your FYP project in either department or across both departments. It's a pretty good program. Did that answer your question? Great. Other questions? Yes? Really loud. Does the say it to me again? Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to restate it, okay, if I can. Does animal research tell us anything about the human condition? Will you accept that? I think it's a, sorry, I'm going through puberty. I think that's a great question, to be honest with you. You know, you study animals, so what? You know, does it tell us anything about the humans? And the answer to that question is both yes and no. Okay? I study primarily something called GABA-A receptors. The GABA-A receptor in a mouse is the same receptor in a rat, is the same receptor in a dog, monkey, human. Okay? So in that sense, the answer is yes. Okay? I also study stress. Now, because one of the main reasons humans drink is to reduce stress. Okay? But what is human stress? You got your exams coming up. You start in college. Your parents aren't getting along. You got to get a job. Whatever. That doesn't happen to rats. Rats don't go to college. Rats don't take tests. They don't even know who their parents are, right? You know? So, is stress in one animal the same as stress in another animal? Probably not. So in that case, we have to be very, very cognizant of the fact that what we study in one organism may not tell us exact information in the other organism. Why do we work in animals? For a lot of reasons revolving around ethics. There's just questions we can ask with animals that we cannot ask with humans. Okay? And some people, I'll be honest with you, think we shouldn't ask those questions. That we shouldn't do animal research. And that's something we talk about in class, the ethics of animal research. Should we be able to do research in animals where the end point of the experiment is the animal dies? That's a great question, and one we talk a lot about in class. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. There's somebody down here, yeah.
I just want to ask about psychology. How exactly does other cultures need motivation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have a picture right here. Okay, I need you to think of an inverted U. Can you guys do that? An inverted U. So his question is sports psychology. What about coaches giving motivational talks? So I use this example in my first lecture in intro psychology, okay? It's been studied. It's called the Yerkes-Dodson equation. It's an inverted U, where along the bottom axis is stress. From, I'm not stressed at all, life is great, to I am unbelievably stressed and I'm just going to die! Okay? All right. And then up the y-axis is performance. Okay? I'll bring it to sport in a minute, but just so it's for everybody. I love giving exams. Okay? Why? Because I don't have to teach that day. Okay? And you will see one of 3 students in the exam. Okay? And they look like this. Okay? Let's say that this is my exam chair. Okay? Alright, so the students all have to wait outside. So they're out here, okay? The speaker comes on and says you can enter into the classroom. And these are usually the exchange students from the States, from Canada, from Europe. Okay? So they come into their exam. They're hungover. We're going to they'll come over here. Just sit down. They have no stress at all, and they do awful. They don't care, and it shows. Right? Okay. You'll have the other student that'll look like this. They'll come in and be like, oh my gosh! This is the most important moment of my life! My entire life depends on what I get on this exam! And you'll hand out the paper and their minds will go completely blank. And I'll sit there and watch them for 2.5 hours and they'll go, They are so stressed out, they do awful. Okay? So that's remember it's an inverted U. That's the point. Really low stress, bad performance. Really high stress, bad performance. The third student is the one that comes walking in. They know it's important, but they understand their life's not dependent on this. You know, they sit down, they're ready, they get themselves all organized. You can tell they're a little anxious, but they're completely under control. The exam comes, this is a person, you know, they're halfway aroused. The exam comes, and they do great. It's the Yerkes-Dodson law. Now, what does that mean about psychology? What a coach has got to do, you know, we've all seen teams, you know, it'd be like, it would be like this, right? It would be like Singapore's national soccer team, right, playing me. You know, they'd be like, look at that guy. He's old, he has no hair, and I bet he can't run. You know, so we've all seen teams where the team walks on and they're like, we're going to kill him. They walk on the pitch, they don't care, they don't want to be there, they got better things to do. They're just going through the motions, and they lose. A team loses to another team that's vastly inferior to it. Why is that? Because they just have no arousal at all. Their performance is awful. Or you'll see teams, like I coach basketball, okay? And we played in our championship 2 weeks ago. And it was an ugly game. Nobody could make anything. You know, they're playing as hard as they can, but nobody, because they're playing for a gold medal, and it's like, this is important. So they're all hyped up, and I couldn't get them to calm down, okay? And they end up doing atrociously bad, okay? So what a coach tries to do is motivate his team to where they're aroused, but if they're incredibly aroused, they try to calm them down so they're less aroused. Because they've got to get them in that middle spot so that their performance is outstanding. Does that make sense? Good question. All right, I got time for one more question. Yes? Okay, good question. What's a placebo effect? I'll give you an example. Here's a placebo effect, okay? Shh. If you're doing a study with somebody, if someone knows they're being investigated, they'll act different. Okay? They'll act different. Okay? That is the basis. That's the most basic way to say what a placebo effect is. Okay? So, let's say I'm studying alcohol abuse, and I give all the people here a drink. They all know they're getting alcohol. So I don't know if their altered behaviors because of the alcohol or because they thought they were getting alcohol. Does that make sense? So somehow I've got to give another group a placebo. Now what I can't do is I can't say, hey, here's some alcohol and hey, here's some water. That's not going to work because they know they didn't get it. I got to make the control group think they're the experimental group. So we did this once. I was studying gambling behavior. And my laboratory had a roulette wheel in it. It was really cool. You could spin in and throw the ball in. Not here, not in Singapore. It's back in the US. And we were studying how does alcohol affect the betting predictions that people make. So we'd have undergraduates come in, and we would take vodka, and we would pour it into a mix, Tom Collins mix. It's a sweetened solution, okay? And we'd measure how much alcohol was in there, and we'd give it to people. And undergraduates, if we told them, come into the lab and you get free alcohol, they all signed up for it, okay? And, hang on, my daughter's calling me, so I'll talk to her later. And, all right, so they would come in and we would give them an alcoholic drink. Now they didn't, we were just saying, here's an alcoholic drink, and they would drink it, and we'd take their blood alcohol concentration, and if it wasn't enough, we'd give them another one. Now the other group, we needed them to think it was alcohol, but it wasn't. So we'd take the Tom Collins mix and pour it in. And then we would take vodka and we'd put it in a perfume atomizer. You know those things that girls go, and so we pour it in there and we'd take the glass and we'd spray vodka, atomize it on the lip of the glass. So that when they went to drink it, they could smell it and they could taste it a little bit, but there's no alcohol in it. So here's an alcoholic drink. And they take a drink and they taste the alcohol, they'd smell it. Now here's the hard part of the study. They'd start acting drunk. And I'm thinking to myself, you are such an idiot. You have no alcohol in your system at all. Okay? So the placebo there is making them think they were in the experimental group. Because then if we get differences between the two, we know it's due to alcohol and not the expectation that it was going to have alcohol. Does that answer your question? Great. Okay, hey. I'm out of time. Let me say two things and then I'm done. All right, the first thing I want to say is I want to say thank you. I want to thank you for taking your time today on a Saturday and coming and visiting NTU and hearing my talk. The second thing I want you to hear me say is when it comes time for you to think about what university you want to study at. First thing I want to say is this. In Singapore, a lot of students think, if I'm going to get a good education, I have to leave Singapore. And that is not true. I came to Singapore because the universities in Singapore are very, very good. You do not have to leave Singapore for a great education. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is this. When it comes time for you to pick a university, please give NTU a look. Look at the psychology department at NTU. We are the 38th ranked psychology department in the world. And I'm pretty proud of that. My faculty are fantastic. And I think we can give you a very good education. So I would appreciate you giving us a look. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Professor Matthews, for the awesome lecture. Now it's time for the lunch break. There are actually two food lines outside. One is outside LT2C7. There is another one outside Lee Kung Chien Lecture Theatre just a few meters ahead. So please be back by 1:50 as there are two more lectures lined up for you today. Thank you.